Everybody's talking at me. I don't hear words they're saying, only the echoes of my mind. People stopping staring, I can't see their faces.
Harry Nilsson was sometimes billed just as Nilsson. He was an American singer-songwriter who was mostly successful in the 70s. He started singing in the late 50s and early 60s. At one point, he recorded some demo songs for songwriter Scott Turner, being paid $5 a track. This was before he had any of his own success. Later, when he was successful, Turner released them as you know, things that had been created by Harry, sung by Harry Nilsson, and he contacted Harry to arrange for fair payments. This is one of my favourite stories about Harry Nilsson. His response was that he'd already been paid $5 a track, so didn't want any more. He started writing his own songs in the 60s, and for quite a while was working doing music, and was a programmer at a bank. And given that this was the 60s, he must have been one of the first programmers around, so certainly not very many of them. He started a solo career and was effectively discovered by the Beatles. He then had quite a bit of success. He was not keen on doing live recordings, so I don't think he did very many of them, certainly until a bit later on. Later into the 70s and beyond, he started doing kind of more weird things. He at some point wrote a musical. He got more unorthodox and more controversial with his lyrics, swear words and stuff. He ripped a vocal cord whilst he was at a party with 3 out of the 4 of the Beatles, but recovered from that. He was badly affected by the death of John Lennon in 1980. So after that, his work became more sporadic. He did dip into some film and TV stuff. And eventually died in 1994 of congenital heart problems. He had a heart attack a couple of years earlier and seemed to be pretty sure that he was on his way out. So he started to record what he regarded as being a final album, but that didn't get finished before he died. So he released 18 albums during his life, including 4 which were soundtrack, but the final album was released in 2019, which was made from the vocal tracks that he'd put together before he died. Hi, my name's Dan. So this was the 3rd album by Harry Nilsson. It's my first time listening to it, but I do know of Harry Nilsson. I was a little bit surprised to find he was American because I feel like his sound is quite British. But yeah, obviously he is. So Wikipedia described this album as being soft rock, folk pop. Acclaimed Music described this as being baroque pop, so I found that Acclaimed Music often seems to say baroque pop when there's pop music, but it involves classical instruments of some kind. And that is definitely what this does. I would kind of claim that it's probably closest to singer-songwriter, but the thing that it reminds me most of is the Beatles, and it's very much kind of in their later phase when they were doing story songs like Penny Lane and Eleanor Rigby, Sgt. Pepper and things like that. Rolling Stone described him as being a crucial bridge between psychedelia and singer-songwriter, and I can get that. So I think the psychedelia I think referred to here isn't so much the kind of rambling, space rocky kind of stuff, but more the kind of folk psychedelia, which was definitely into songs of a somewhat, I tend to use the word naive, some might say banal. They're not really banal songs, but they're about either very everyday things or very kind of fantasy in a kind of fairies and pastoral kind of sense. And this has that kind of gentleness and feel of not quite as much of that studied naivety is moving a little bit on, and definitely kind of moving into the singer-songwriter stuff that that was really prevalent in the 70s. There's a variety of backings here, but there's definitely a huge presence of not what you'd think of as classic rock instruments. There's quite a bit of brass and kind of brass band feel. I think possibly this more than anything is the thing that makes me feel like it's got a kind of British feel to it, is that there's a kind of sound of a brass band that's a very British thing, as opposed to the kind of the New Orleans brass band, which is a jazz kind of thing. But there's at times there's faint strings, there's woodwind, there's kind of string quartet-y feels, and then there's generally light bass and drums going on, and then sometimes piano. The song-wise and kind of harmonic-wise, often it's kind of got a feel that harks back to earlier, and I kind of want to say 1920s barbershop-y feel. It's a kind of style that isn't definitely kind of rooted in just that, but it's got that kind of feel to it. What else should I say? The vocals are pretty nice. He does his own harmony vocals. I know from reading up about him, he was very into close harmony particularly, and it's nicely done. Apparently he had a 3.5 octave range for his singing, and I can believe that. It's not a kind of strident, strong voice. It's quite a mellow voice, but it's really nicely done. There's bits where he does what I believe is called counterpoint, where they're not, the versions of himself aren't singing the same words and they're harmonizing vocals. They're singing two lines that kind of interleave and go around, and maybe different words at the same time going on. So yeah, that's good. The sound, as I say, is somewhat unassuming and gentle, and again I want to reference the Beatles, that it feels very much like that. I know he was great friends with the Beatles, and he was described as the American Beatle at times. The songs are about generally gentle things. Some of them are kind of, love songs and general songs about being a person. It's like Everybody's Talking and Saying Goodbye to Me. I should have said Everybody's Talking is the only song on this album that he didn't write. It was written by a guy called Fred Neil. All the rest are his songs. And then there's kind of some more story song stuff in here, which again has that kind of Beatles feel to it. I keep referencing the Beatles. And I think the story songs are probably my favourite songs on the album. Good Old Desk, the second track on the album, is a song about a desk. And it is just nice. Mr. Richland's favourite song seems to be a song about a fading rock star, and how his relationship with his fans changes over time. It's an interesting song. Mr. Tinker is a song about Mr. Tinker the tailor and his sad, lonely life. And Little Cowboy is a song about a child. And it's well done. I enjoyed it. I will definitely put that out there. I think the songwriting is nicely handled. It feels effortless in that sense. Nothing here is particularly challenging. I'm not necessarily saying that that's a good thing, but I think here, it makes for kind of good, acceptable listening for all sorts of people. It's certainly, family friendly. It's musically light-hearted, and it's just pleasant. I really enjoyed it. So I'd love to know what you think. Please talk to me through the comments box. That's it from me for now.
My old desk does an arabesque in the morning when I first arrive. It's a pleasure to see it's waiting there for me to keep my hopes alive. Such a comfort to know it's got no place to go.